Good morning and good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Sustainable Sites Community Call. I'm Anna Grace. I'm with the Sustainable Sites team, and today we are very pleased to feature the first project in this particular series that's located outside the United States. The important and beautiful Bai'etan Exhibition Center is part of a larger urban redevelopment effort supporting biodiverse landscapes. And we have a wonderful project team today presenting for you. We're delighted to have a representative from our GBCI North Asia team to set some context. Then we will hear perspectives from the project owner, from the project designer, and from our sites consultant. Note, one of our speakers today will be giving his remarks in Chinese. As everyone on this call, I think, knows, sites is based on the understanding that land is a crucial component of the built environment. So developed and managed landscapes have the capacity to protect and even regenerate the natural systems. So they appreciate and value this way, and their economic and social values are highly important. So as is demonstrated by today's project, Sites provides this comprehensive tool to better ensure that these life-enhancing landscapes and these outdoor spaces are actually valued and recognized and prioritized as sustainable, resilient, and regenerative. Here's a snapshot summary of participating sites projects. This is growing every day. To date, we have more than 275 projects. Projects covering 40 US states, Washington, DC, which is where I'm located, and 17 countries listed here. The chart on the right shows the breakdown of various projects that are applying and certifying with sites. A quick announcement. Many of you know that GBCI has recently expanded our efforts to existing built landscapes as opposed to new construction only. So projects can now be evaluated on their sustainable site management practices, and they are encouraged to report social, economic, and environmental benefits. Built projects can ultimately earn sites certification for their actions and leadership through this pathway. We're really excited. We are still accepting applications to join and participate, so please share widely. We continue to seek collaborators on projects as well as subject matter experts in site management and landscape performance. So I imagine there's a few of you on this call. This is our on-ramp for the adaptation to the sites rating system for existing. So we developed guidance, we shared the guidance. Once we have participating projects, we will have a chance to assess feedback. And finally, we will release the existing landscapes framework. I would like to introduce right away Brown Xu from GBCI North Asia. He's going to be our first speaker. I'm going to introduce all the speakers because after Brown, we will head right down our speaker lineup. So first of all, Brown joined GBCI and USGBC in 2018. He's the Director of Market Transformation and Development. He leads the marketing development and project support. He facilitates the growth of GBCI's sustainability programs in the region, including LEED, the LEED Green Building Rating System. Brown has long worked to move the industry forward, facilitating projects including the first volume program in China, the first LEED for Cities Planning and Design project, and has participated in 2 industry committees, including LEED Data Center Advisory and LEED Logistics Advisory. Brown, before I pass it to you, I'm also going to introduce our other speakers. Mr. Rong Chen is the General Manager of the Guangzhou Pearl River Industrial Park Investment Development Company. He's responsible for organizing the development of the Old City and the Village Renovation Project in Julongguan District in Guangzhou, driven by the old state-owned factories. Mr. Chen has served as Senior Business Manager of CITIC South China Group, Deputy General Manager for Guangzhou Zhujiang Industrial Development Company, General Manager for the Hunan Zhujiang Industrial Investment Company, and of the Shaanxi Zhujiang Investment Company Limited. So his rich expertise in residential, hotel, commercial, and large complex developments will benefit us today. After Mr. Cho, Lily Pan, who is a Sites AP, will speak. Lily is the founder and the general manager of Trend. She has a doctorate of architectural science from Cardiff University and a doctorate of financial management from the National Development Research Institute of Peking University. Ms. Pan is the Director of China's Health Building Industry Technological Innovation Strategic Alliance and the Secretary General of China's Green Building Industry Technological Innovation Strategic Alliance. I reversed our speakers, so I'm going to finish with Ms. Du Zhang, who is an ASLA Fellow, the Director of Sasaki Shanghai Office, also a CITES AP, the initiator of the Shanghai Landscape Forum, and a USGBC Leadership Award winner. So she's designed many award-winning projects in the past 22 years, served as a jury member of prestigious national and international design competitions, and has been teaching graduate design studio at Tongji University several years now. Thank you for your patience as I introduce our wonderful team. I would like to toss the control here. I'm going to stop screen share, and Brown, if you would share with us your slides. Thank you very much, everyone.
I really appreciate people for attending today's meeting. And now I will give you an overview of the development of sites in China. So I have listed some projects in this slide. So actually all these projects, they get a certification and the pre-certification. And right now, by today, there are 19 projects registered sites in China, including China, Hong Kong, and China, Macau, and China, Taiwan. And the 5 projects get a certification. So you can see they're on the top of the slide. And the 6 projects get the pre-certification. And the rest of them, they are under the process of pre-certification or certification. So this slide shows the milestone of sites development in China. So the first sites certified projects is certified in 2019 February in China, Hong Kong. And in the same year, September, we have the first site certified projects in mainland China. And last year, our biggest site projects is landed in Shanghai also. And also in this year, January, we have our first site planting and certified projects in Guangdong. So I will introduce these projects one by one in the following slides. So the first is the Annual of Stars in Hong Kong, which is the first site certified project in China. So actually this is a reconstruction project because this landscape is nearby the sea. And the purpose of this landscape is try to give citizens a place can enjoy the site near the sea, while in the previous design, they do not have a lot of seats, a lot of facility for shading. So actually they do reconstruction. So after that, the green area of the Avenue of Stars is 8 times than the original area. And also the seats is double, and the shading facilities are 7 times. So now the people can have enough space to relax and enjoy the site. And also they do some work for the publicity and education. And there are 4 digital panels were installed in the project to show the real-time data, which is also very important for sites because we emphasize green education for everyone. So the next project is the Runway Park in Shanghai, which is the first site certified project in mainland China. And this project is very interesting. Actually, it's an airport. When the local government want to reschedule the city planning, and they think that the airport could be transformed to an urban space for citizens and office workers to relax. And this project also is developed by Sasaki and Trent, which they are our today's panelists. So they do a lot of funny work to try to engage people in the park. The next is the 10th China Flower Expo, which is actually the world's largest site gold certified projects. The certified area is about 2.6 square kilometers, a very huge project. And the purpose of this flower expo is try to collect different flowers from China to show to the public. While the project team try to also keep the biodiversity and make the ecosystem stable. So the 60% of the vegetarian area are planted at the native plants in Shanghai. And also they do a very good work for the water treatment. So in the project, they have a super large sponge park. The total annual runoff control rate of the park has reached 80%. I will talk about this concept later. And next is the Bai'etan Exhibition Center. So I will leave this project to our leading actor, the consultant, the designer, and the owner, and they will give you a wonderful introduction tonight. So when we go through all the projects, we also want to find why now many projects, they are realize the value of sustainable landscape and why they want to pursue sites. And we think that a very important reason is China has set a very clear carbon emission goal. Chairman Xi has announced that by 2060, China will reach to carbon neutral. And that really reminds a lot of people the value of sustainability. And more people are realized that sustainable development is not only about energy, it can be adapting every industry. So we think this is a very important foundation. And the second is actually is about the sponge city. I would say that is a very special term in China. Maybe as a government, they do not will set the building code like that. You can see the left of the slide, and that in 2015, the government already set a very clear goal that cities in China will collect and utilize 70% of the rainwater. With 20% of the urban area, they need to meet the target by 2020, and the proportion should be raised to 60% by 2030. So it's a very clear government activity to promote a sponge city. And China right now have already designed its own standard, and it was officially implemented nationwide in 2019. So they do have a very clear definition of a sponge city. So I will not go through every word of the definition, and you can actually download the standard by the link which I attached in the slide. I would say that it is mainly about that effectively control the urban rainfall and the runoff, and minimize the impact of urban development and the construction on the original natural ecological environment. So we think this purpose meet the vision and value of sustainable sites. So it can give the project team a very helpful tool to implement sites in the sponge city together. So I will just introduce an example of sponge city in China. So it's a very small city, which is Pingxiang. It's located in Jiangxi province. And this city actually is a very old industrial and mining city with depleted resources. So its infrastructure is very weak. So every year when you have a big rainfall, floods occurs every year. So you can see that a lot of those pictures. In 2015, when the central government want to promote a sponge city, the local government of Pingxiang think it's a very good opportunity to refresh and reconstruction their infrastructure. So they do a lot of work. All those pictures are the actual photos in Pingxiang. So like the wetland park, and also they do some stormwater drainage system. So they try to resolve the problem of floods and try to renew their infrastructure. And the result is good. You can see the difference between the photo in 2016 and the 2018. And also, actually, they, as an old city, since they are lack of resource right now, they use this opportunity to build a new supply chain about the sponge city, because you can see there are a lot of infrastructure need to developer and need to manufacture. So there are more than 100 enterprise. They will focus on their business on sponge city, and they expanded their business in the nation. So we think that China's mandatory policy on the construction of sponge city has become a major foundation of Chinese projects to award site certification. So they do not have a very hard requirement to meet some prerequisites in sites. And also the government right now emphasize the value of ecological environment, and with the COP15 hosted in Kunming, Yunnan. So the government right now will pay more attention on the sustainable landscape. So this is my sharing. So I'm really glad to do the presentation today. Thank you.
好，大家晚上好。这个很荣幸有机会在这里向各位介绍我们广州巨龙湾项目，并分享我们在可持续发展方面的一些实践。首先，我先简单介绍一下我们公司的一个情况。那广州珠江实业集团呢，成立于1979年， 是从统承包建造那个广州第一家中外合资的5星级酒店白天鹅宾馆起步的，目前已经成为广州1000亿级的国有大型城市运营服务集团。我们珠江产业园投资发展公司呢，是由珠石集团组建的全资子公司，是国企产业园整合和投资建设、产业运营的一个公司，也是城市全价值链综合服务的一个开发商，是我们巨龙湾项目全周期管理的实施主体。那么巨龙湾项目的开发建设呢，是在贯彻新发展理念，推动高质量发展，实现可持续发展的时代背景下进行的。项目呢，位于中国南部的这个4大超级城市之一的广州。那么广州呢，是国际商贸的中心，也是综合交通枢纽。我们项目呢，总的开发面积呢是1.56平方公里，大概建设350万平方米的总建设开发量，然后呢，可提供大概15万人的这样子的一个工作机会。在这个区域里面呢，大概有3.2万人的常住人口。那么项目呢，就位于广州的西部这个区域呢，交通非常便利，它是广州和佛山的这个中心，距离各大交通枢纽都大概在50分钟车程以内。这个项目的现状呢，我们这个由这个旧厂、旧城和旧村构成。那么这个图里面可以是这个照片呢，是我们整个项目的一个现状。那么如何开展我们这个项目的开发工作呢？那么前期呢，我们是对标了世界一流的这些旧城改造项目，包括纽约的 Dumbo、波士顿的南湾、伦敦的科技城等。我们也聘请了世界一流的团队来给我们做服务。我们的产业规划是由 BCG 和这个戴德梁行负责的，这个城市设计呢是由 SOM 的旧金山团队负责，然后环境景观设计呢是由我们的 Sasaki 负责，建筑和可持续发展的，包括可持续发展呢也是由我们建筑社负责建设，负责做顾问的。那么我们的这个项目呢，在珠江后航道的西岸。那么整个项目呢是一个开放的这个空间，有丰富的生态资源，条件非常得天独厚。那么我们利用了场地内的公园、河冲等景观资源优势，创造多样性的开放空间，实现场地内生态廊道的拉通，提供了整体生态的一个环境。那么在我们项目范围之内呢，也有30多处的历史建筑和人文自然景观，传承场地的历史文脉，以开放空间连接历史文化亮点。我们将展示中心，也就是我们这个图上面的左下角的这个展示中心，定义在把这个冲口仓活化作为我们的展示中心。那么最终呢，实现历史人文资源、自然生态资源与开发的新的建筑呢有机的融合，相互共生，友好的建设发展。那么我们呢是将这个白鹅潭展示中心作为片区可持续发展的一个起点，开展我们的工作。这个冲口仓呢是一个50年代建成的粮仓。那么我们把这个单一功能的仓储功能活化后，变成了城市展厅，这个包括了我们整个白鹅潭的这个城市的设计的展示，也包括了一些接待、会议、配套办公、城市休闲聚会、餐饮等复合功能，通过建筑活化，赋予旧建筑新的生命。这个是我们一些活化的过程。那么白鹅潭展示中心呢，是在2021年的9月份完成并对外开放，实现了我们项目可持续实践中间的第一步。 那么作为广州市最大的城市更新项目，在大湾区有着引领示范的效果。我们在开展城市景观规划设计之前呢，希望建立一套科学的体系，系统的指引我们在可持续发展的目标。那么我们觉得呢 ，SASS 体系的理念和原则和我们需要实现的目标呢是非常契合的。所以在片区的第一个项目建设中，就对标 SASS 体系国金级的要求，制定我们项目建设的评论准则，并围绕着体系中的10大维度细则，对项目进行全生命周期的开发和管理。最终，我们希望以白鹅潭展示中心的建设作为巨龙湾片区可持续发展的开篇。也衷心感谢大家聆听我的分享，谢谢。我就这么多。
Okay, good evening and good morning, everyone. I'm Do Zhang from Sasaki. It's my great pleasure working with Mr. Chen and his team on this Bai'etan Exhibition Center project. We started working on the design of the project since November 2020, and the construction of phase 1 was finished in October 2021. And in January this year, we have got the site's platinum certification. Where the site is located is a mixture, it's a place of mixed culture. Among the 4 major cultures on site, the most influential ones to the site's history are Lingnan culture and industrial culture. The Lingnan culture is characterized by small settlements along the water bodies and surrounded by ficus trees, while the industrial cultures are mainly represented by heavy industrial facilities and big ports along the Pearl River. With the city transforming its industrial base into other uses, many of the facilities have been moved to other places around the city and offer the extensive opportunities for new uses to come in. However, today around our site, there's very limited public spaces and green spaces in the area. Neither the industrial facilities, neither the industrial heritage left to today, nor the gardens in Lingnan style are integrated into the public realm. It's not well used before this project had started. At the same time, the city is growing. The public transportations has expanded to the Liwan area already. The 3 subway lines will soon cross our site, which has offered great opportunities for people to come to this area and for the area to grow into a new reactivated urban center. So when we look at the site, we were well inspired by the site context characterized by ficus trees. No matter we're at the canal front or next to the Pearl River, or in front of the small villages, or even within the big factories, we can always see ficus trees. They are benchmarking all the places we have been visited. So with that in mind, we had came up with our design concept, Live with Ficus. We want to use groves of ficus to link the past and the future of Julong Bay area and making it a real characterized new urban public realm. We had distilled the 3 very important elements from the site, the ficus, the warehouse, and water, into abstract patterns and apply them into different parts of the landscape to make a new Pearl River and cities grow on our site. by connect the city and the Pearl River and create a continuous green belt system and improve the current site conditions and increase ecological habitat. At the same time, respond to the site history, we integrate architecture and landscape to create a very important linkage and segment of the green belt system along the Pearl River. Zooming into our phase 1 area, before the construction started, the existing site was characterized by the historic warehouse, which was built in 1950s. And a lot of big ficus trees, some are dated back to 300 years ago. And some very important industrial characterized elements along the water's edge. At the same time, there are a lot of challenges on site as well. A big building addition has blocked the connection between the historic warehouse and the riverfront. And existing flood walls has separated the warehouse area from the river's edge. And a lot of invasive plants were spreading around the entire site. So after analyzing the existing conditions and explored the potential of the site along with our client and architects, we had come up with this design of the phase 1. We had removed that building addition and making space for the new riverfront plaza to allow for people to use, to come back and reuse this riverfront space and recreate the connection between the warehouse and the riverfront, explore the opportunities to restore the previous dock area next to our site to allow the boat to come offshore. And at the same time, the design had preserved extensive existing trees along both the Pearl River and the canal. So after the building addition was removed, we had created an extensive riverfront plaza to allow people to enjoy some relaxed time and providing opportunities for gatherings at the riverfront. On one end of the plaza, we had proposed the ficus pavilion, which was inspired by those historic ficus trees around it. And after the pavilion was built, it has become so popular that some people have been using that as their alternative working space. The existing flood wall was integrated into the landscape design. It's converted into a bar table, which has changed this barrier between between the riverfront and the plaza into a very important landscape amenity at the riverfront. Yeah, we had also tried very hard to restore this dock space to allow the boat to stop here, allow people to come off and on and off the boat from this location. The old port edge was also restored, and we had integrated the walking paths, the jogging paths, and the bike paths into the area. So that becomes a very important linkage in the Pearl River Greenway. Along the water's edge, we had also introduced terraced gabion walls to improve the edge condition and allow the plants to grow, and also integrated another overlook at the canal's mouth, which was built around the existing ficus tree groves. So the entire landscape design for the project has been taking a multifaceted sustainable initiatives. when we look at sustainable landscape, we see it not only as the environmental sustainable, but also we focused on its social and economic perspective to make it a systematic design thinking. So on the environmental value side, we pretty much followed what sites has outlined. For the site context, since we're dealing with an existing site, so we have automatically satisfied many of the prerequisite points, and we have automatically gained some credits in the site context chapter. Then moving into the design credits, we have designed rain gardens to collect the runoff from the building roofs and use that as amenity on site. And we have also introduced a stone dust as a permeable surface for the extensive plaza area to allow the water to infiltrate into the soil underneath. And at the same time, since we used all native plant materials, we have eliminated irrigation on site. As I mentioned before, we have also conserved healthy soil and appropriate vegetation on site and removed invasive plant species from the existing condition. All of our plant materials are native to the Pearl River Delta region. When we design the landscape, we have carefully considered introducing the native plant communities. So both the canopy trees and the ground covers are coming together. And while we were placing our ficus pavilion, we have been carefully locate that within the tree growths. So all the shade from the trees can provide some shading to the pavilion and reduce urban heat island effect. And in this material, we had tried very hard to reuse the salvaged materials, both on the finished surface and also in the base layer. Some of the materials demolished from the existing buildings are reused in the exterior as benches, sometimes as signage walls. At the flood wall, as I mentioned before, we had converted that into a bar table. We had introduced the precast concrete cladding on the surface and the bamboo slats on the top. And all of these assemblies can be also disassembled. And in the entire site, we had used bamboo slats to replace wood slats at all the decking. Since bamboo is a fast-growing material, it's also native to the area. That kind of replacement of the wood material can protect the forest. So besides all of those initiatives related to the environmental value, we're also putting our focus on increase the site's social value and inherit the site's cultural value. The entire site is universally accessible and it's open to the public. It offers nice space for people to retreat and relax at the riverfront. Integrating the riverfront with the Pearl River Greenway system will support the physical activity, and the gardens and various gathering space support social connection. And as I mentioned before, we had distilled the site character into some symbolic graphic patterns and applied those patterns into many site elements, such as the wall cladding, such as the railing, to remind people about the site history and its local character. In many places, we're also trying to integrate some message about the endangered species, both on plants and animals, by imprinting plant leaves or those animal species footprint on the cast-in-place concrete pavement to remind people the importance of protect those species. The economic value is something many projects don't always focus on, but in this project, we are trying to create value, the economic value at the same time. Besides using this phase 1 project as a catalyst for the entire redevelopment of Julong Bay area, the project also used a lot of local labor, which will support the local economy. And also by reusing and conserve a lot of existing materials, both the hard material and plant material, the landscape construction has saved 11.8% of its cost, which has contributed to the project's success. So at the end, we have got the first CITES Platinum certification in China. We have many thanks to the client, Mr. Chen, and his team's support to the project during the entire process. Thanks. I'm gonna pass to Ms. Lily Penn.
Thank you very much for the invitations, and it's a great honor for me to attend this webinar. Mr. Chen has introduced the overall situation of the project, and Mr. Oh has introduced the sustainability design practice. And next, I would like to introduce the three parts. First is the project site certification, and the other two important contents that the project has paid attention: ecological restoration and carbon reduction. The sustainability is now becoming a target for almost all the projects that are in China. Like said, as Brown said just now, our chairman Xi has announced the China City 60 carbon goals to achieve a carbon peak in 2030 and try best to reach carbon neutral in 2060. And the period from peak to neutral is only 30 years, which is much shorter than that in Europe and the United States. The interval from peak to neutral is 43 years in United States and 77 years in UK, France, and Germany. So achieving carbon neutrality in 30 years is really a very ambitious goal. Carbon is a big concern for China, but China's environmental concern actually covers a wide range of areas. Like Brown also mentioned, the sponge city development. I also listed some of the international standards and guidance China has participated, and some regional local standards guidelines China initiated in related with biodiversity. As the site is a very powerful and excellent standards, we considered can help the projects to achieve the sustainability goals. And also, as mentioned by Mr. Chen, that the sustainability goal set by site standards is also very consistent with the sustainability goals we set for these projects. So this is the overall site achievement. Among the site standards, there are 56 points are directly or indirectly connected with biodiversity in the sites. And Bai'etan Exhibition Center has got 47 points in this part. We listed here are the credits and also the prerequisites that Biomass projects has achieved complied with in the site standards. And as mentioned by Ms. Do just now, the project has used native plants for its vegetation. For this project, we have around 4,000 square meters as vegetation areas, and all of them are using native plants. And we have also added some TBMF communities, and the BDI has increased from 1.91 to 4.009 after construction. When we look other sites credits, we can see that a lot of credits are also directly or indirectly connected with the carbon reduction. We have counted the overall points. There are 66 points are related with carbon reduction, and the Bai'etan Exhibition Center has got 47 points in the pot. Also, as like mentioned just now by Ms. Do, that the project has used reuse a lot of building materials and also use like prefabric building materials to reduce the carbon emissions. The project also has considered the plant restoration and the original plant restorations. The overall carbon reduction by the plant can reach to 125 ton CO2 emissions, and by reducing the material use and by using the reused materials and also recycled materials, the projects can reduce the embodied carbon by more than 200 tons. And we also considered a lot of strategies to reduce the scope 2 carbon emissions by using high efficient equipment like LED lightings and by implementing PV panels. So this January, the project has received its great achievement, the first China's site platinum certified projects. And it's a great honor for us to be participant. Now I will have some further introductions on the ecological restoration and carbon emission reductions. The project is located in the ecological corridor of Guangdong, also introduced by Mr. Chen just now. And it's in the intersection space of eco corridor for bird and eco corridor for fish. However, the project has also many ecological limitations, such as a lot of hard pavement because it is a previously developed project. And also the water quality surrounded can still have the space to improve. And there are existing vegetations, but if we consider the site as a whole, then the green areas can be increased. So overall, that there is not enough habitat space and cannot connect the surrounding ecological environment. And the riverbank can be softened and the vegetations can be provided to recover its eco-corridor link function. The construction of the project considers the reconstruction of the eco-corridors from horizontal and also vertical. This is the eco-corridor link of riverfront in the northeast. The project provides habitat plants, living places, and food sources for animals. And once it's built, it began to attract birds. And we look forward more birds and more animals coming back to these projects. We started practice sites in 2019, and through the first size projects in mainland China, the runway park in Shanghai. And since then, we gradually practice sites, the concepts of ecological restoration in various projects, like a university campus. The Kunshan Duke University, I think, is the first university projects to pursue sites. And we also use the sites as a very powerful reference to develop internal biodiversity standards for companies in China. After the development of the Kunshan Duke projects and also the Runway Park projects, client has come to us and request us to develop an internal biodiversity standards and ecological restoration standard for them. And we consider that sites is really a very great reference. And now sites has been used for residential projects in Tier 3 cities in China, and also super high-rise commercial buildings in Tier 1 city in China. And last year, we are invited to be one of the participants of the China local standards. The standard's name is Park City Evaluation Standards, which integrates the ecological restoration practice, including the biodiversity ideas. And through our own experience, we can see the impact of sites in China from one project to another and from project practice to industry change. Talk about carbon reduction. We all know that the carbon includes 3 scopes. Scope 1 is the direct emission, and scope 2 is the indirect emission. Scope 3 is the indirect emissions happened outside of the projects. Now, when we talk about carbon reduction, most of the projects consider scope 1 and scope 2 only. But actually, scope 3 needs to be considered as well, because the scope 3 carbon emissions can account for more than 50% of the life cycle carbon emissions for a construction projects. So to reduce our projects' carbon emissions, we have 2 major principles implemented. One is green purchasing. We utilize the rapidly renewable materials like the bamboo slides, as mentioned by Ms. Doe. And we also use most of our materials come from local. This can reduce the transportation carbon emissions and can also boost the local economy. And we also have most of the workers are coming from local or nearby. So this can also boost the economy and reduce the transportation and maintenance carbon emissions. To reduce the scope 2 carbon emissions, we use the very high efficient equipment in our projects like LED lightings, like also the high efficient equipment in the building itself. And to further increase our sustainability goal and reduce our carbon emissions, projects planned to have PV panels in the project sites to further reduce the carbon emissions. The other principle is 3R principles to reduce waste and reduce the material utilized for these projects, and reuse the materials that could be considered as waste, and recycle materials utilization for this project. And we also use, following the ISO standards and the China local standards, to do the carbon reduction calculations to see what is the result after so many practices. And we are satisfied by the results that we achieved. But of course, we look forward some further achievement because like carbon reduction and sustainability is not a one-time practice. It should be a life cycle approaches. Since China launched its 30-60 carbon goals, we have developed very sophisticated policy systems in China. And we think that the site standards can fully consistent and can be in line with China's 30-60 carbon goals. And as a sustainability consultant, we have helped various kinds of projects to achieve carbon reductions, including factory, office, residentials, and parks. And we also look forward to more carbon neutral practice with further market development of sites. This is my speech today, and welcome to contact us. Thank you.
Thank you, Lily. Thank you very much. I would encourage all the speakers, if you are able, conditions permitting, to turn on your cameras. We are very lucky today to have Danielle Piernanzi, who's our site's beating heart and expert on the call as well. We welcome questions from our attendees today for any of the speakers. We do have a few minutes remaining on time. Truly thank you all for your presentation today. The community, the world, the program has a lot to learn from your expertise, from your experimentation, and from your successes. So really wonderful photos, and thank you for today. I'm going to begin with the first question. I wrote them down so we would try not to forget. Please continue to send them. I encourage everyone to continue to do that. The first question I think is maybe for Lily or Do, who has experience here. What would you say is the biggest asset that the project has to offer the surrounding community?
I can try to answer that first. Maybe Lily can add to it. I think the biggest contribution of this site to the community is that it has turned a industrial land, which includes the port and the industrial facilities, warehouses, into part of the public realm, which will be accessible for all the communities surrounding that. So people will have opportunities to get to the riverfront, which used to be occupied by ports, by warehouses, by other facilities. It's separate. It used to be separated from the community. So I think that's the biggest value it offers.
Let me add some. I think, to me, I think that it's a very big asset that the project has practiced sustainability and practiced carbon reductions, because after the launch of the 30-60 carbon goals, a lot of people still very confused about how to achieve that, how to practice the sustainability in the projects. But I think this project is an ideal cases to show that how to practice sustainability in a construction projects, how to restore ecological systems in a already built and some people considered already polluted sites.
You mentioned it just now, Lily, too, but I had a question come in asking if you can talk a little bit more about the carbon numbers and a little bit about how they were assessed.
You mean how the carbon reductions calculated?
Yes.
We follow the ISO standards, and also we, for example, if we calculate the scope 2 carbon reductions, we calculated how much energy it can reduce, and because China has its own carbon, like the factors, the carbon factors that we can use to convert the kilowatt hours to the carbon emissions. So that is how we calculate the carbon emissions for scope 2. And for scope 3, for example, we have reused the material so that we don't need to buy the new materials for the projects. So by do the mathematics to compare, we purchase a new material and minus the energy we used to reuse the materials, we get the numbers of the carbon emissions reduced for the material reuse. And also, for example, like the labors, because we use the local labors. So we calculate their transportation, because their transportation carbon emission is scope 3 for these projects. So we calculate their carbon emissions by walking and by taking bus to these projects, comparing if they need to take cars from far away places. By do the mathematics, we get the transportation carbon emissions reduction.
Thank you. This question, I think, could be addressed to anyone on the panel, but I'm wondering if you can share more about what resources or funding the government provides to support implementation of the Sponge City initiatives? Who would like to take that one?
Is this a question about the Sponge City in general, or it's a question about this project?
My interpretation is about the Sponge City initiatives in general. Is a sites project able to leverage those resources, for example?
Well, in my experience, I don't think there's special funding set up for project to implement the Sponge City requirements. It's just a sort of mandatory requirement each project has to meet. That's been my experience in the project I've worked on.
Thank you. I'm going to ask a final question, but I would like to make sure that everybody knows if you have follow-up questions for our panelists and you email us at sites@gbci.org, we'd be happy to make sure that it's also responded. There's been a lot of interest in this project. The question I will ask finally is, how did you work with construction contractors to understand the site's criteria? Did you have a training program, an orientation program that you could expand on a little bit?
I can talk a little bit about how we worked with a contractor. It's always challenging at the beginning of a project like this. I think it's been my experience in both the Bai'etan Exhibition project and the Runway Park project. At the beginning, the contractor didn't understand why we do what we do. So we had spent quite a lot of time actually educating the contractor about what we really care about during the construction process. And we really want them to carefully displace those materials that we want to reuse, such as the bricks from when they demolish some existing buildings. We want them to be really careful in displacing the bricks and put them aside and sort the bricks and find the good ones, the ones in good shape, to be reused in the paving in the future. And we want them to provide a real good protection to all those wood beams they displaced from the building, and carefully check the size so we can design those wooden benches accordingly, based on the existing wood beam size, things like that. It took us a while to actually get them to understand that and follow the instruction to what they're supposed to do, what they're supposed to do. Although there are still many places that we are not 100% happy with, but I think through a lot of conversation and education process, with a contractor, they have made a great improvement, I think, when they handle all the existing materials. I have to say, we lost quite a few existing trees at the beginning of the construction, and we were very annoyed by that. So following that, there have been many serious conversations with the contractor about what to pay attention to, things like that. And they have improved, so. Yeah.
That's very impressive. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that experience. We want to remind folks that we have another community call at the end of the year. So please come join us again. This has been an extraordinary experience. We will have more information on our website about that. We will be present at this year's conference on landscape architecture that's happening in San Francisco. Danielle will be there. We would love to see you in person. Reach out to us if you're going to be there also, so we can set up time. And our call, as I mentioned, is in December for the next community call. I really can't thank our speakers enough for participating with us today. Please send questions if you have them, and look out in your inbox for a recording of the call today. Thank you, and have a wonderful evening and a wonderful day wherever you're located.